So welcome everybody to the NAPI team meeting for July 12th, 2018. We're just going to go through the current milestone that we're working on and talk about the issues that are in there. So our first issue is the blog to coincide with 6.x and 8.x backport availability. I have Arunish did send me an email earlier today saying he's working on that, and we're planning to get together hopefully to sort of finish it off. I think it's next Monday or Tuesday. So we're moving forward on that. I haven't checked the PR for the 8.x Semver minor yet or recently, but I think that's still moving forward. I know that Gabriel, you backported a few things for that already, right?
Yep.
So I think we're okay for whenever that goes out, if I'm not mistaken.
Just a question of policy. Is it okay that if I initiate the backport of something that I think is important to have there? Because one of my backports is a reaction to Miles asking me to backport it because it didn't land cleanly, but the performance one he didn't ask.
Yeah,
And I
no,
just
that's fine. I think like normally more things would be backported, but there's sort of a big backlog in 8.x.
okay.
And so the approach he took this time was to sort of ask people what they thought was important.
Okay.
So if you think that that one's important, and I think that, I saw that, I agree. If we can get better performance and you can get it backported,
Yeah,
without too much
definitely.
work, it's definitely worth it, right?
Yes. Okay, good.
So yeah. Yeah, and that's anybody else. If there's something you think we need to backport, feel free to tag it there. So I think that's all there is to say on that one. The next one is to create the workshop for Node Summit. As Jim mentioned last week, he's not able to make it this week, but still working on it. He did send us an email saying that the third one is complete. And he has some time to comment and review on Monday. So, I think we should all have an action to take a look at the latest one.
I left him some comments in the issue, some
Okay.
minor things.
Okay. But yeah, so if anybody who hasn't looked at it yet, if there's time, that would be great. Anything else? I think other than that, we pretty much have our deck. Although Hitesh, I think we needed you to fill in your About You slide.
Yeah, I did that last night.
Okay.
And I also added a slide, or ported the slide from Arnesh's old presentation about all of the NAPI contributors.
Okay.
So I added a slide for that.
Okay. So do we think maybe we should just open that up and go one last run through to see, like, is there anything else that left that needs to be done? So let me pull that up. Okay, there's the link. I will share it. So here's the presentation as it stands. So, okay, so we got our intro, about. So this slide, I think we get rid of, right?
Yeah, I think that can go.
Because we've replaced it, I think, with all of these.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So basically, say hello. I guess we need to tag, who was going to talk to this one?
I can talk about this one.
Okay, so is that you? Yes, that's
Yep.
you right there.
Yeah, and I believe it was Jim for NodeConf EU, if I remember correctly.
I'm gonna see how I fit this. This is okay. I'm gonna not put a picture there because it kind of conflicts with all the other pictures.
Yeah,
that's fine.
But we'll remember that you're going to do that one. That kind of makes sense because you're the last one there, so you can just naturally lead into it.
Mm-hmm.
That's good. Then our workshop schedule, objections. All right. Are we missing something here? Online tutorials. Okay, so we need to.
I think Jim did start writing one for async worker, right?
Well, that's what I was just
got
like. He's got the async worker one. Is that here?
It might be up one directory.
Maybe they're different getting started.
It's in the issue.
Yeah, special topics, async worker.
Yeah, here we go. There.
Okay, so basically I'm going to add that into there. Oh, somebody already did.
Yeah, I did that.
Okay, you're beating me to it. Great.
No worries.
We need to also fix that ayinc worker to async worker.
Oh, yeah. Okay, there we go. Apply. Oh, wrong color. And this is a nice 8-bit color, blue, or yeah, no, 16 color, that's 4-bit, right? Let's see. There we go.
Okay. So, and I guess we'll leave this one blank still here in terms of, I think hopefully we'll have it, but if not, we'll just take it off the day of.
Excellent.
Right. So I think we should discuss. I see that Nicola and Hitesh, you guys put together a list of modules, which is good. Do we think that's enough modules?
I don't know if we've settled on which modules we want to use. So some discussion and feedback would be great right now.
Right. So I saw there's a number of proposals there. Are there concerns about some of them, or should we easily pull that list up? That's probably in an issue somewhere, right? Or is it in an email?
No, it was in email.
Yeah, it was in an email. Sorry, give me 1 second. Someone's knocking on my door.
Sure.
List of native add-ons for workshop. I think that was read.
And maybe if you just paste it in the chat, then we'll all have the current list to talk about.
Sure. It's
or I was thinking Hitesh, because he might have it handy. But,
oh yeah, so.
Okay. What's your office number? 4242.
So Nicola had a list, and then Hitesh added some more.
Yep.
Sorry, I'm back.
Yep. So we're just saying, if you have the list handy, if you could paste it in the chat, maybe we.
Yes. Give me 1 second. Do you want the combined list?
Yeah, or whatever's the most useful for us to discuss and move towards the list we want to use.
So let's see this. How do I go to chat over here?
Oh, do I have to promote sec? So Ali, you may be there. Sorry, let me.
It's pasted.
I'm going to find, once I go to sharing, it's harder to find participants. There you are. Sorry. Okay.
Yeah, so there's those. I guess it's not much.
Okay, I pasted both the lists that I came up with and Nico's list.
Okay. So is that right? Okay, so there's the two. So I guess I don't have any additional input. Is there a concern that I saw some of the discussion where maybe some of them might be a bit hard to port, or?
Yeah, I think Couchbase, for example, might be too long for our workshop.
Maybe we need to split the work between some attendees, but it's very difficult if they didn't implement native Redstone before.
Mm-hmm.
So I taken a look at your list, and I think that libx, ml.js, and Couchbase could be more difficult to port. For developer that never implemented native add-on.
Right. So
this is my concern. For the rest, are all good candidates to use in the workshop.
Correct me if I'm wrong, though. We will also have some people who will be starting from scratch, though, right? Because they intend to expose something to JavaScript. So some people might not want to tackle an existing module. Is that correct?
That's okay too. I think in my mind, the two key things: one, have a big enough list, and the okay from the providers for if people who do want to do it. If somebody wants to start working on their own or has wants to do something else, that's good too.
So then I guess worst case scenario is we have 24 people and they all want to port a different module.
Right.
So then if we want to cover that, we need 24 modules.
Yeah.
That's what I was thinking. But I don't know how easy it is to get a list of 24 good candidates. The other thing too is like the one you mentioned that's hard. I think we could break out like a second. Here's a hard, like an advanced list. Like unless we think it's one, like if there's one, I think there was one that was like, hey, this uses stuff that we don't expose in the API. It's like, okay, well, if that's the case, it definitely wouldn't be one that I want on the list. But if there's some that are like going to be harder than others, but still doable, maybe we have like, here's the regular set and here's like, oh, for advanced users, if you think you already know what you're doing on native modules.
Yeah, we could probably split this up based on difficulty.
So I think that way it would let us, keep a few more. And if there is somebody who's like, really experienced, they, give them something that's a little tougher.
Yep. Do you have any thoughts on, so there were at least some modules on the original list of like most popular modules or whatever that Jason had compiled,
yep,
which don't seem to be maintained anymore.
Okay.
But there were certainly some candidates over there where it looked like, it was a fairly trivial module that could be easy to port.
I would still pull those in, like if they're still, because they were fairly heavily used, right?
Right.
If we have somebody who has enough interest to port them, maybe that's a gateway to having them maintain it.
Okay.
I don't know. That's just my thought, right? Like
that seems like a reasonable idea.
Well, from what was pasted into the chat, even if we include Couchbase, we have only like 13. So we still need 9 more modules to cover the absolute worst case.
I think we can probably get. I think we need more than 9 because things like UTF-8 validate I saw was on Nico's list, but it looks like somebody ported that already last week.
Okay.
Oh.
Well, that's a good problem to have.
Yes, yeah. Yes, definitely.
I think, the bigger the list we can get, I think we could cope. Like if we had half the number we needed, we could say, well, we've only got either find your own or maybe work on one that somebody else is porting as well as an exercise. Ideally, though, we'd have at least 24.
I have another idea. Can we conceivably think of any C or C++ libraries that we might want to port like from scratch, which could be interesting?
I don't have any off the top of my head. It's not a bad idea, although in terms of adoption, the bigger problem is getting people to move over from existing stuff.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, but just for the sake of the workshop.
So you are you proposing to create a new add-on from scratch using C++ library?
If there is one that is interesting enough for the Node.js ecosystem and isn't yet exposed. I don't know. It's a long shot, much longer than the existing add-ons, which simply need to be ported because they've already proven that they are interesting. Otherwise, they wouldn't be around at all.
Yeah.
but just because we don't have enough. That's the only reason I'm mentioning this.
So Hitesh, that other list that we had, what if we pulled the ones that weren't ported over from that? How many do you think are there?
Oh, I mean, that list had like at least 100 modules on it.
Right. So if we just use that list from, going down from the top, I think can we just pull that list, say, take the top 30 and add it to our list here?
I just pasted the list onto the chat.
Okay.
I think some of the top ones we've already ported.
Yep.
But yeah, certainly I think, some are probably harder, like FFI, I think might be one of the harder ones to port.
Yep.
But yeah, I think we could walk our way down the list, see which ones haven't been ported yet, and make a case for them to be a candidate.
Okay.
That's kind of that was kind of the exercise I was going through yesterday.
Yeah. So can you continue that? And
sure, I can go. I think I stopped at like 30 or so, but I could keep going down that list.
Just to basically get us to the point where, like, okay, here's the ones that aren't obviously too hard. I think, like I said before, it's good if we at least just fire an email off to the maintainer saying, hey, this is what we plan to do. Let us know. Like, I don't think we may not want to wait for and an okay, but if the email just says, let us know if you prefer we didn't do that. Otherwise, we're going to go ahead and do it.
Okay, sure.
And then I think for the day, like, I don't think we should put them in the slides necessarily. I think just on the day we should have like a printed set of papers.
Mm-hmm.
24 papers that have the list that we can hand out to people to basically say, or even one which has got one piece of paper with the list that we have people circulate and strike out the one that they're going to work on.
Yeah, we could do it like how Rich does the code and learn thing, which is these tiny slips of paper with a package name on it.
Yeah, that's not bad. I think even like a single piece of paper that we hand around and you strike it out would work too, because it's not a huge number of people. But but yeah, whatever. So you volunteering to put together slips of paper, whatever works there, and bring
sure. I'm volunteering in the beginning to at least get the list compiled, and then once we review that, putting the slips of paper is not too hard.
Excellent.
I can do that.
Yeah, we just need to have somebody do it. That's all.
Sure.
Yeah. Okay. Sounds good. So any more we need to talk about the list? I think by next we have a week, we have a week, so hopefully by then.
Yeah, I can try to get this put together by tomorrow.
Okay.
Because I think we probably need to reach out to the module owners sooner rather than later. Yeah,
I think so. Like I think like sending it out at least Monday saying, hey, next week we're going to, as an FYI, this is what's going on.
Yep.
Give us a yell back if you don't think that's a good idea, kind of thing.
Yeah, which is kind of why I was also leaning more towards modules that were actively maintained, because at least you knew there was a maintainer who was, around.
Yeah, I mean that's like I think prioritizing those makes sense to me. But some of the others, if they're really still, if they're high up on the usage list, it's still something that, us getting somebody to take over would be important.
Yep. I buy that.
Okay, so I'm going to go back to, so we were talking about, where was he? Okay. So I think anything else on the workshop we should touch on? I'd encourage, and I'm going to try next week for us, since Jim isn't going to be at the workshop, for us to go through the workshop if you haven't already, just to make sure we're familiar with it.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, document guidance on adding APIs to NAPI. So
right. I still need to. I'd asked somebody else to open a PR. They didn't. I'll open a PR.
Okay, that's kind of what I thought happened. Okay, so you'll open the PR this week.
Yes.
That's good. SQLite, has Anisha joined us? Yes.
Here. Hello.
So where do we stand on that one?
I have the so we ran into a bug on is int 32. So I checked to make sure. I found a different way to check if the value is an integer, and that is done. And now I'm just trying to find an efficient way of checking the date and rejects parts of it. But I should have a PRM soon today.
Okay. Sounds good. And it sounds like the maintainer, he was basically saying, hey, I need those things or
Yeah.
whatever. So it sounds like if we send a PR, he'll be happy to merge it, which is good.
Yep.
Okay. Burning down the list of issues. Any particular issues we should talk about or raise this week?
Don't believe so.
I was thinking that after the, like I see, Gabriel, you opened the one to sort of update the bundled version of the API.
Yep.
After that, we should probably put out a release, I was thinking.
Yeah, I actually landed that today.
Okay,
so
good.
So that's in there. I squashed the commits and just mentioned the original commit IDs in the commit message.
Sounds good. Is there anything else we think we should get in before we do a release?
I do have a small PR which I just realized this morning that I should have done in the previous PR, which was to backport this node persistent, which we've been using for a while now. It's a node internal, because I had to change the way the callback bundle is done, to use a class rather than a structure, because we needed a destructor for it. But we don't really need a destructor if we had node persistent, because that was the only reason for the destructor. So by copying node persistent out of the node tree and into our copy of node internals, I was able to put reduce the delta between what the bundled version and the in-tree version.
Okay.
So it's a minor touch-up on the previous PR. So I think we should get that in if we're going to release.
Yeah, there's no rush, right? I was just thinking it's been a while. It's been a couple months.
Yeah.
Maybe doing a release would be good.
And I mean, it is a performance improvement. So all those folks who are not yet on a version of Node that has this might want to reinstall and reap the benefits.
Okay, so yeah, so we'll basically wait for that. If there's any other ones that people think we should get in before we land, let us know. Otherwise, we'll plan to try and do a release or likely early next week.
Like in general, I mean, as the impetus for a shipping a version of an API fades, right?
Yeah.
Do we intend to backport all the new APIs that we add? Because I mean, I just landed thread safe not so long ago. Like, do we really want to bring that in, or is that going to be just like the sugar and no implementation? So,
well, I think we want to continue to pull things into Node add-on API itself. Now, that doesn't mean we need to backport everything to older versions, right? So in Node add-on API would then have to be smart enough to say, okay, well, I guess we've got it guarded by the Node versions, right? So it would basically be, if you want to compile, you would use the right Node version, and an API, Node add-on API has to not depend on the things that weren't available if we haven't backported them everywhere, right?
Yeah. Actually, I'm trying to think
and some of those are still experimental, right? So first they have to get out of experimental.
Yeah, true. I guess the experimental, now that we have a concept of an experimental NAPI, then we may, I guess we have a legitimate point by saying that we only support the stable ones.
Right, exactly. Node add-on API. Well, Node add-on API can have wrappers for experimental things, but they are tagged. They need to have the same experimental if-defs.
Yeah.
Right. So that I think we can continue to do. In terms of something where, and then we've already got the model that if we release new APIs, they'll go into a new Node version, and we'll need Node add-on API to again respect the Node version in terms of hiding things that you shouldn't be using.
Right.
And then separately, I think it's really on as necessary to backport things. I don't think we should be trying to backport everything from the most recent APIs backwards.
Yeah, I suppose since we are like on a different schedule than Node.js, we could just reactively backport and then and then release a new version for whoever complained that this is missing or that is missing.
You mean in Node add-on API, or
Yeah,
okay,
yeah.
okay, wait a sec. You're talking about into the bundled pieces.
If necessary, yes.
Yeah. I think I'd be more reactive on that part.
Yeah. Okay.
Like it's because they're using that they're already not getting advantage of the full. They're still not getting the full benefits, and they have sort of if they want to compile across versions, they can use the Node version as the guard. Yeah, that's kind of my thought is like, unless people are saying, hey, that's causing me grief, I'm not being able to migrate or whatever for that thing, just leave it as what it is. If there's fixes, sure, but if there's new things,
yeah, then we didn't need to think twice. Yeah.
Because we may not even port those back to version 6 or version 8 either, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And actually, in fact, I'd almost argue that we don't want to put anything in there that hasn't been backported all the way.
True.
Right? Because then you could get into a case where it's like, well, okay, this works for me on 6 if I use the non-NAPI version, but then it's not available for anyway.
Yeah,
which is a bit odd. So yeah, okay.
All right.
Okay.
Cool.
And then the last thing is documentation push on Node add-on API.
Yeah, I still have I have a couple that I'm working on. I'll get a PR out hopefully tomorrow.
Okay.
I pushed the documentation for function.
Okay.
And tomorrow I ended a function reference, so it's all on one PR. So take a look for review, and okay.
Okay, so you're adding function reference to the same PR, or
yeah.
Okay,
yeah.
so maybe you're saying we should wait until you add that to take a look, or
if you start or anyone, someone can start to review the function.
Okay.
It's better because we are more fast.
Okay. Yeah, I'll try and take a look at it. I'm away tomorrow, but I'll try and take a look at it if I have time today. Otherwise, I'll make sure to get to it on Monday. Anisha, how's the ones you're looking at coming?
I haven't had a chance yet because I want to get the PR in for SQLite.
Okay. Definitely, I guess it sounds like you're pretty much done on the SQLite one.
Yes, so I'll be looking at this. Yeah.
Okay, just want to make sure we get these in at least the first cut by next week. So.
Okay.
Since we'll be at the summit the week after, and it'll be good to have it complete by then.
Yep, definitely.
Okay. Okay.
Hey,
anything
everyone,
else?
I need to jump
Yep.
off the call.
Yep. Thanks.
But yeah, if you need anything, just email me. I'll be happy to help out.
Sounds good.
Okay.
All right.
Anything more to discuss on documentation? No. Okay. I think that's everything that's in our current milestone. Are there other things that people wanted to talk about this week?
Yeah, I have one. Regarding these non-validated versions of the APIs. So it seems that for performance reasons, we may want to have a version of those APIs which take JavaScript values and convert them to native values, where we don't type check. We go straight to the conversion, and if it fails and if it's sec faults, we take no responsibility, because it seems that the validation is taking a chunk out of the performance. And so we've had one person complaining about this. I mean, they are working on a hash table, so I guess that is a pretty chatty application. But I have found that if they switch from using node buffer to using V8 array buffer, and we provide versions of our APIs, like for example, like an apt-get value uint32 and apt-get array buffer info, where we don't first check is it a number, and we don't first check is it an array buffer, but we simply cast it and go. Then we can match the performance of what they have now, which is V8 bindings straight and using node buffer. Of course, if they kept using V8 and array buffer, it would be way faster than anything we can provide. But at least if we force them to use array buffer, or if we advise them to use array buffer and give them these non-validated ones, we can match the performance of V8 plus node buffer. So this is a case study of a single add-on, which seems to suggest that we should have these functions, and then we.
And how much is like when you? Is it like a 50% overhead, 10%? What's the?
Well, I have the chart. Let's see, where was that issue?
Oh, you posted.
Yeah, it's here
In
it is.
stable node, I think.
Yeah. I have it. It is now in the chat.
Okay, thank you.
So yeah, I put a chart there. So basically we have, let's see, an API. Yeah, so if you look at an API array buffer fast, that means we don't. So basically, we're sending two buffers and two 64-bit integers from JavaScript into the native add-on. That's the measure.
So these are the parameters, right? So you basically the parameters get passed in, but then you need to convert them using the call to.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Yep.
For the buffer, you need the pointer to the data and the length, and for the int64, you need the int64.
Yep.
And so V8 buffer is what they have now. So using V8 bindings, not an API bindings, and using a node buffer. And if they didn't switch to an API, they could get much better performance by using V8 and an array buffer. But
yeah, I was just wondering what's the absolute comparison? Like, is it 100%, 50%? What's the?
What do you mean the absolute comparison?
Well, like, okay, if it takes 10 milliseconds with V8, it takes 20 milliseconds with an API.
Oh, well, it's let's see. What we have now is, well, I'm not sure. He said at the beginning of this thread, which started in the other issue, that what did he say? I think for 1 million calls, it's 200 milliseconds just to do this conversion and no useful work. And the 100 milliseconds of that is just to call nappy-get CB info is 100 milliseconds of those 200 milliseconds. So getting the parameters at all is very heavy. But then the validation would significantly reduce the other half.
Yeah, that's what I'm trying to get a sense of is like, for if it's a 5% improvement, it's sort of like, well, not so interesting. If it's 100%, like it sounds like we're talking 25% possibly. Because if it's like 50% of the time is just calling in, like making the call in the first place, right? So that's not going to go away.
Yeah. So
if it was 100 before, we're optimizing at best 50 of that. And if I look at these graphs, unless they're not logarithmic, they're linear, right?
Yeah.
So V8, which is the green is the worst. What's the today? Is V8 array buffer?
No, V8 buffer is what's being used today. That's the released version. Is my
right. So that's like 10 million. And is that total calls or is that the cost of the conversion?
This is what our benchmark outputs. I'm not sure what.
Okay. Right. So the difference between that looks like about 25% between the blue.
Let's see. An API buffer is the orange. So if they were to just switch over straight with no modifications, then that would be the orange. And actually
compares to blue, which is, so it's like 7 versus 9 or something, right? Or 10.
Well, okay. Well, let me see. One is what they have now, which is blue, and then orange would be if they convert it straight, and this sort of greenish yellow would be if they switch to array buffer, but still we didn't make any API changes. So that
greenish,
would be
which is greenish yellow. That is
the third last.
Okay.
So we can achieve third last without any changes.
So that's better than V8 buffer, which is what. Okay.
It's not better than V8 buffer. but it's better. It's better than.
I guess I'm having trouble with the colors. There's a yellow and the green. Okay, so it's over third last on. They're in the same order. The thing.
Yes.
Okay,
So I think the interesting ones are first versus third last, and first versus last. Because first is what's released, and third last is what could be achieved if only the add-on maintainer made changes from using buffer to using array buffer.
Right.
But otherwise, no changes on our part.
Right.
And then the last one is what we could achieve if we provided a validation-free functions for both array buffer and for int64.
Right. So it's around the. I'm just spitballing the. One looks like it's around 7 and one looks around 9, right?
Yeah. Oh, you mean like the on the y-axis? Yeah.
Yeah. Right. Which says that so like that would say 9 over 7. That's like 30%. So yeah, it's this is a substantial difference.
Yeah. I mean, we could basically cancel with our combined effort, the module maintainer's effort and our effort. We could essentially cancel the impact of switching to an API for this particular module.
Right. So my real question is like I having two versions of the same function sounds a little ugly.
Yeah.
This is my first feed, but I wonder is like, were we too conservative? Like, what if we just don't include the check and it's up to the module owner to make sure they're doing the right thing? Like if somebody was writing it today with NaN and V8, do they get that check for free or not?
They do for buffer because the Node.js implementation of buffer uses something called array buffer view, and it does the is array buffer view first. So yeah, the Node API does it, but yeah, I mean, if they did V8, then it would be up to them to validate. Yeah, whereas we validate on their behalf. So yeah, we kind of.
Is that in the one case though? Like, so, okay, the buffer versus, so like the int64, what's the equivalent if they were doing it on their own?
Well, yeah, I mean, if they used V8, then they can choose to simply cast to an int64 because they know they did it somewhere, right?
Well, if it came in as a parameter, it's still a handle. Like it comes in as a JavaScript thing. They still have to figure out, they still have to know what type it is.
No, not necessarily, because remember that every native module is usually fronted by a JavaScript module in the same package that the same maintainer controls. Yep. So they can do the validation on the JavaScript side and make sure that the binding always gets like clean values.
Oh, I was trying to say, for the conversion to like, get nappy get value int64.
Yeah.
They have the same, if they're not using nappy, they're using NaN or V8. If they don't, I'm just trying to assess, like if they don't add the check themselves and they try and convert, will they crash?
Yes. And we would be no different.
Well, except that we've done the check. Don't we have the check?
Yeah. If we were to remove the check, we would behave exactly as the engine behaves.
Right, and I'm kind of wondering if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Then the next question is would that be breaking? But
yes.
like, if we said that wasn't breaking, my first thought would be maybe it's that we should just remove the checks.
Yeah.
Right, because if it's that big an overhead and, okay, we're adding safety that you didn't get with the other APIs, but, most of the time
we're not giving you the option of being performant.
Right.
That's the big trade-off.
Yeah. So that would be my wonder is, can we get rid of the check? Like, does getting rid of the check make any sense? Just as opposed to adding a new method?
Yes. That's an important question.
And then in terms of being breaking, it's like, okay, well, I guess today you could make the call, check the result, and if it told you the result was wrong type or something.
Yeah, you get nappy invalid arg
today. Okay.
but yeah, it would be different.
Hmm.
I mean, the potentially things would crash where they didn't crash before.
Yeah.
So you know, it could be considered a regression at that point.
Yeah.
So that would be bad, I guess.
Yeah.
Because then we would have to treat it as a regression and then add the check back in.
Yeah.
So,
how many of these methods do we think we'd need to duplicate?
Well, I don't know. Pretty much nappy get value star.
Right, and there's quite a lot of those, aren't there?
Well, I'm catting pipe grepping.
Yeah.
So we got double int32, uint32, int64, bool, string, and external. So, and this doesn't take into account nappy. This needs single quotes. Nappy get, and then I don't know if this works. Dot star info. So we get nappy get CB info. That doesn't do validation. Buffer, even if we don't do validation, actually we don't do validation in nappy get buffer info because we know that Node does it on our behalf.
Right.
Nappy, yeah. So array buffer, typed array, and data view. We would need to remove validation. So that's a total of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I'm not sure if for string you'd want to remove validation. Like, I suppose you might. I'm not sure what the general use case is for strings. Like if there's like lots of bulk string transfers going on from JS to native, in some module. But okay, in the worst case we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. So 11 more APIs, all of which do exactly what these do, except they don't check. That's
not so crazy. I wonder if what I'm wondering is like nappy get value int64 under unsafe.
Yeah, exactly. Fast or unsafe or whatever.
I was thinking the unsafe part because it gives you the,
yes, okay, the stark warning.
Exactly. You can use this. There's a warning. The question would be then too.
Could the unsafe thing with buffer, right? So
right. Could those just could the safe versions just call do the check and then call the unsafe version?
No, because the whole reason why we create them is that performance is an issue, and so we don't want the stack construction destruction at that point. I don't think of another function call.
Yeah, I was thinking for the non-safe, for the safe ones.
Yeah, but if the safe one made a function call to the unsafe one, then that's a function call. That's setting up a function call.
Yeah, I'm just wondering if that's actually significant. Like, is a single function call, like we're at that level of the is check being equivalent to that, or is the is check something? It's because we're going back across the barrier.
It's true. Yeah, I'm not sure. I'm not sure how heavy the check is on the V8 side.
I'm just thinking more on like the maintenance side of things, right? Like,
my idea was to just inline the common bits and just have a common function. Yes, but it's inline. So
okay. Yeah, that's copied over. That makes sense.
So yeah, I'm a big fan of do not repeat yourself.
Yeah.
So I would definitely do it with an inline function at that point. And then that would be like the meat and potatoes of each one, and we just call it.
It does seem like, if there's a 30% difference, as long as, I assume in this case, like they're not doing much else in their call, right? They're just getting the parameters and going back or something like.
Yeah. I don't exactly know what it is, but the fact that this person came out and pointed out that this particular thing is a bottleneck for them, I assume that this particular thing is a bottleneck for them. And since it is a hash table, right, the hash table doesn't really do much. It just, it's mostly just set get from what they're saying, at least. So that's why this chatty use case bothers them so much, is what I gather from the discussion.
Right. Yeah, because we kind of, we kind of knew chatty things there was going to be more, but
yeah,
it's just that balance. Like, is it safe enough that now more people will use it than would otherwise?
Right.
And versus the extra maintenance. Now, 11 functions isn't a huge number, so.
Yeah. It's kind of a tough call, but I suppose we need to look at the big picture and see how many more of these performance sensitive use cases we're going to run into.
Yep.
Because, for example, one idea that I floated was, if you want to reduce the number of parameters, why don't you set up an array buffer and then just use these data views to set things inside the array buffer on the JavaScript side, and then pass a single array buffer and cast it as a native structure.
Yep.
But the problem with doing it that way for this module was that there are two array buffers involved, and their data cannot be contiguous because of the structure of the module. So what do you call that? The application doesn't allow those two buffers to be contiguous. So that's why that idea didn't work. And it also has to be zero copy. So,
right. I guess that idea, though, if you extended it to passing two things instead of.
Yes.
Right,
Yeah.
like you can always take it one further, right? If there's two things that can't be contiguous, well, then just pass two. That's.
Yeah, but there are four things being passed right now, and since the buffers seem to be sort of application specific, I would say that the best you could do is go down from 4 to 3, or
right.
actually from 5 to 3, because it has to be from 5 to 4, because the external cannot be bundled. Since on the JavaScript side, you cannot get the value of the pointer and stick it in a structure. So the external has to be separate. The buffers have to be separate. The only things you could bundle potentially, and even those with great difficulty, are the two int64s, because there are actually no APIs for writing int64s into an array buffer.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, if that's what it is you're kind of standing on your head too. So.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I mean, if it were normal data like int32s and booleans and strings and stuff, then I'm not sure about strings, but at any rate, integers you could easily use an array buffer versus like an array. If somebody came and said, accessing arrays is slow, I would immediately tell them use an array buffer to transfer this. So
yep.
so that would be that, but in this case, it's not. So it's not sort of coagulatable, to put it that way. So then you got to ask yourself, is this a validation? Should we provide an option for not validating?
Right. Yep.
Yeah. So I don't know. Maybe I should open an issue, or I mean, we already have an issue for this. So I guess I can ask the question, and I don't know, just shoot an email to, or just shoot a mention to collaborators and see what distills from that.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. The thing I think, like, in addition to the graph, because there's a lot of data there, it would be good to say, here's the proposal, here's what you get today by default, and call out the percentage difference.
Yeah. Okay. Like I can remove most of the ranges from that graph, and just keep the relevant ones, because I mean, this is kind of an experimental graph with me playing around with different things.
Because what's the 110, 100? That's how many calls you've made.
No. The number. Oh yeah, you mean the x-axis? Yes. I mean the differences become accentuated the more times you run it.
Right.
So that's what that illustrates.
Right. Yeah. So it's more like on each individual one, what's the percentage difference?
You mean each individual iteration?
Well, like, if I make one call,
Yeah.
and it's, it's 30% slower.
Yeah.
That would be like, that would be the clear, okay, how much is the overhead? How much are we, if you use this method instead of the other one, I'd almost be interested, like, for each call, what's the delta? Maybe it should be the same, like, but if it's like 30% faster, and then like, here's for a typical one where we have 4 parameters and we have to get it, we have to get those 4 parameters, the overhead is half as much before we get started, kind of thing. Because it's obviously related to how many parameters you have as well, right?
Yes. In fact, we already have a benchmark for that, for various combinations of parameters.
Right.
And
Okay.
and when I wrote this benchmark, I basically used that and just added another case where we have this particular combination.
Right.
So yeah, we're already looking at things like I don't know, like sending 100 numbers across and stuff like that.
Right. Yeah, because I'd be interested in just the raw numbers. Like, okay, here are the 11 new things we have to add. On a single, like, if you're just going to have a single parameter of this type, it saves you X, right? Which is,
Oh, I see. Okay. So write a version of the benchmark that tests the safe versus unsafe.
Yeah, well, yeah, like trying to show the comparative, like, what's the benefit if we provide these 11 unsafe functions.
Yeah. Okay.
You don't necessarily have to write the benchmark, but if you ran it on both the, like, if you just gather the data and then present it as here's the delta benefit you get, sort of in the one, the degenerate case where you pass in a single parameter, don't do any work, and return.
Yeah.
And then I guess the more typical one of, like, a couple parameters, and then I guess it's the other thing is like, well, if you actually do some work, does it actually matter? And the answer might be, well,
No, probably, yeah, that's
matter,
likely,
right?
no. Yeah.
Like, so it's clear, like, we're really, these things would be to serve these really chatty things where you're doing nothing, but hey, if the benefit's big enough, maybe it's just worth it, right?
Yeah.
So I just think, like, putting it like that, it would be a very concise, here's what we might change, here's what the benefit might be, and here's specifically the cases where it matters.
Right.
And then, I think we just want to, we'll need to, this group needs to decide. So getting some extra feedback from people would be good to help that.
Okay.
Okay. Any other things people want to talk about this time?
In the chat, there is Ali.
Okay.
So something not very big. So we had the diagnostic working group meeting yesterday where we were talking about diagnostic tools and their tiers of support. So one question that comes up is, if Node project is saying that this particular profiling tool is tier 1, how does that intersect with the NAPI or the add-on API? Because many of those APIs are not available through an API at this point. So I wanted to basically bring that up here and see what people's thoughts are, whether the level of support or the tier of support that the Node project claims for a diagnostic tool should have intersection with the add-on API or not.
My initial thought would be, it's a strong indicator that we should have something in a formal API, and an API is the preferred place, I think, for if we want to make it like platform independent.
Right. Yeah.
So I think my thought is just, yes, I see some alignment there.
So I think in the diagnostic working group, we were discussing it purely from a diagnostic utility point of view, and I don't think we were discussing. I don't think we did enough consideration of how it impacts other VMs and NAPI. And I think maybe that should be part of the discussion as well, which ultimately would mean that we, in as part of this working group, we'll have to take some of those APIs and promote them to an API. Right. So if there's an intersection between tiers of support, and we think something is a tier 1 thing for Node to support, I think an API should have those APIs as well.
Yeah, I think that's a good sort of a good track of thought that we should follow. Has anybody else got thoughts on that?
I'd like to see some of the APIs we're talking about that we might want to expose via an API. Is there a link somewhere?
So in the diagnostic working group, actually, there's a document that Michael was showing, and
Yeah,
it wasn't talking about APIs. It was more talking about category of tools. So, for example, the CPU profiler or the heap profiler, right? So those have APIs to go along with them, but the discussion there was more around the capability rather than the APIs.
Yeah, I had, and to answer the question, Gabriel, I had a gist, which was a draft that I'd shared with a few people, but my next action is to create a PR so that we could give you that link.
Okay.
But it won't list the APIs. It's like Ali said, it'll basically be like, profilers, debuggers. It's the sort of higher level tools.
Right.
But I think it can be used as one of the things that you would use to prioritize what you think should be part of an API.
Okay, I'm just trying to figure out like who would write applications against these APIs, and why would they? Why? And I mean, would they consider it important that they be ABI stable, or are those folks writing applications against these APIs such that they are already fairly committed to Node.js and therefore committed to maintaining whatever they write? To the point where they do not necessarily need this API stability. So, what is our audience for these APIs, basically?
I think it's more obvious when you look at the tools, but they're tools that are working with Node, and so they're consuming either Node or V8 APIs to do a bunch of the work sometimes.
So now it is pretty much V8 APIs for most of these tools.
Okay.
So an API would provide a way to basically a way to standardize what Node will provide.
Okay.
As opposed to them just using, what's available today.
Yeah. That's good. Yeah.
So yeah, I think Ali, that's a good thought of I think we've already had the thought of an API could be broader. We focused on the module needs to start with, but it's sort of the place to address the same issues in a broader scale, and that's probably a good way to think about prioritization on that front. So did you want to, did you just want to raise that or as an idea, or is there something more concrete you wanted us to start thinking or looking at?
Yeah, so at this point, I just wanted to get people's thoughts and opinions on this one. I think both working groups probably need issues on this topic. I think the intersection goes both ways, right? So what as part of this working group, what APIs we should probably add to an API, probably this would be good input. But on the other hand, for diagnostic working group, I think whether or not something is tier 1, we should probably think about availability of APIs, right? Availability of an API as part of the criteria, or at least discuss it as part of the working group.
Right. Yeah. You're basically, one of the criteria might be to be in tier 1, you have to be using NAPI APIs.
Or an API, yeah. Yeah. If we are not providing neutral APIs for a given capability, then it doesn't make sense to say this is a tier 1 thing for Node to support.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. It may be that's part of the, you have to have a good test case, but you also have to be using these APIs, because if they aren't there for you to use, obviously it's not in our top tier.
Yep. Yeah, this sounds good. But it does mean that we have to have the APIs ready to go.
Yeah, it does mean that we actually have to do the work.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
But I think that's a longer term thing. Today, we're still fairly focused on getting adoption for what we have there. There'll certainly be a point where we then say, okay, if we've achieved that, what else should we start adding, right? Then this would be a good way to drive some of that, I think.
So unfortunately, I have to drop off now. But I think I'll convert these 2 issues on both of the working groups.
Sounds good.
Cool.
Okay, thank you. Bye.
Okay.
Bye.
Yep. Anything else people want to talk about? Okay. Guess we'll talk to you all next week then.
All right.
Okay. Bye.
Okay,
Bye.
bye. Thanks for sticking around.
Yeah, no worries. Bye.